Welcome friends. In this one we're going to learn how to make a web page with two parameters. So let's get going here. Crank up Visual Studio this time. Let's go to File, New, Website. Shift-Alt-N as a key combo. Alright, and again make sure you select Visual C# and then ASP.NET empty website. And for the web location and the path you can leave those exactly as they are and then just click OK. Let Visual Studio load the usual templates here. Alright, let's take a look here. And again, this video will be longer because there's a lot of detail that has to be covered. So right click on the name of the website in the Solution Explorer and go to Add a new web form. Leave the name as default, click OK. So remember, this here is our basic HTML. We've been over this to a reasonable degree. So I go over enough detail to give you a good understanding, I think, of what's happening. But beyond that, you may have to do some exploration on your own, okay? Alright, so switch over into design mode. So click the design button, lower left-hand side. And then from here, into the toolbox, search box, if you like, type, for example, grid view. So drag and drop a grid view into design mode, like that. And before we do anything else in terms of the grid view tasks, under this we're going to place two text boxes. Remember, this video is about two parameters and how you can read the two values from text boxes, pass them to the parameters into the query so it can operate on a table, and then it can retrieve the results for us and show them back to us in the web page. That's the overall logic here. Okay, so we're making an interactive page. Let's take a look. So from the toolbox, type text, search for a text box, drag and drop that in there, and then repeat that just one more time. So put another box in there, like that. And now to keep everything neatly organized, let's do this. We have only one grid view. We don't have to rename it. Of course, you are free to rename it if that is what you want to do. And you do that by typing right click and then properties. Right click the name of a control, go to its properties. And you should see a properties panel appear somewhere. In my case, it's on the right side. And here, if you go through these are the properties that it possesses. You see, for example, there's the ID property, and it's called grid view 1. You can change that if you like. But again, because we have only one, I'm leaving it. With the text boxes, however, we have two of those. So I'm going to give those different names. Alright, so make sure that in the properties panel, on the right side, you're seeing text box 1 and not something different. We're going to rename that first. Alright, so if you scroll through the names on the bottom, under miscellaneous, you have the ID. You can change that, for example. So imagine we're going to be working with the table we have been using. So we had the departments and we had the sales amounts. So I'm going to call this first text box the box where we will place the department name. So I'm going to say, for example, TXT, short for text box, and then DEPT, and then name. So we're calling that box text department name. And notice that everything gets renamed automatically. If you look over here, you see it says TXT dept name in the design mode, and up here in the properties it should also change to TXT department name. And then from this drop down on the right side in the properties, you can select text box 2. And all of this, as you can see, is nicely synchronized. So when you make a change in the properties, notice that the focus and the design mode is also switched to that next box. Alright, and then in the bottom for the miscellaneous, put TXT, and say here we will put sales amount. So text sales amount. So you understand the purpose of the boxes. Okay, close the properties panel, auto hide it, and now switch over into source view. And this is what we have so far. So you've got the grid view. Notice that, of course, by default, it's empty. Nothing there just yet. Then we have a BR that indicates a break, push down to the next line. Then we have our text box control, ASP colon text box. The ID is what we called it, remember? And the run at service simply means that it's an interactive control or dynamic control. That means, for example, We can submit information through it. And so on. Just like with the grid view, see where it says run on server? So remember that means it's a dynamic control. It can change between page reloads. All right. So over here, in front of this one, I'm going to put department name, like that. I can type text directly in here. And in front of the next one, I'm going to type sales amount. I'll leave this here for a second to make sure you catch up. All right, let's give this a go before we do anything else. So hit Google Chrome, and let's see what we've done so far. This is basically just laying out the user interface. It's a very simple one, but we'll get the point across. All right, and we have just 2 boxes. I'm going to enlarge that. So I'm using Chrome here. You can enlarge in Chrome. All right, so you've got 2 boxes, and right now if I type stuff into them, right, if I hit enter, nothing happens. Nothing. There's not even an attempt to reload the page, for example. That's what I mean. So look at the next stage here. Right now, if I hit enter, when I place my cursor in that box, look at the little page icon where it says localhost and the host 52626. That little icon, nothing is happening there. You see that? So first we need to send this for processing to the server. And to do that, these are the steps we are going to take. Unload this. So close that page. All right, and then go back to design view for a second. And select the box called the department name. Right click and go to its properties. And we have to do that so we can enable a specific property called auto postback. So set that to true. I'm doing that in the properties panel on the right side, auto postback true. And if you look carefully down below, it says automatically post back to the server after the text is modified. You see that? And this is important because that means the information will be submitted and then read, fed into SQL Server, and then use that to build up the query, and the query will then return results to us. All right, so make sure that's true. And then go into source view for a second. And if you look at the source view, the only thing that's been added right here, you see that? It says auto post back true. If you want to now take a look. You can enter these things by hand also. Just type auto post back like that, you see? And set that equal to true. We can do it by hand, that's the point too, once you know enough of them. And it produces the same effect. Okay, so now we have boxes that are interactive in the sense that you can enter values and it'll be sent over to the server for processing. So let's hit Google Chrome and observe the results so far. Give it a second here. And again, sometimes when you do this, it can be a bit slow. All right, so we've got up nice boxes. Enter some values there, okay? And then hit enter on your keyboard and look very carefully at the little page icon in the tab of the browser. You see it spins for a second. I'm going to do it one more time. Look carefully. It spins for a second. The little page with the folded corner. That's telling us it's going to the server. That's working fine. Good. Close that. So the next stage, go back into design mode. And now we can continue with the stage of configuring the connection. So take a look. Right click the little thing here that shows grid view tasks and then choose the data source as we've done before. Right from here, choose SQL database. You can leave the name, that's fine, unless you want to change it to whatever works for you. This stage is as we've done before, so I'm going to be a little more quick. New connection, server name. All right, computer name and then slash SQL Express. All right, choose the database. So we'll be using, remember, my DBase. Click OK. Right, remember we've gone over the connection string. Click Next. Click Next. I'm going to take you about this in a second. Remember, this is going in a configuration file. This here will go into web.config. And from here, you're connected to the database. You can specify the tables you want to use. So in our case, expand the drop-down, and let's use table 2. And you can leave everything marked this way. So select everything. And first, let's do this now. So click Where. And this is where we configure our filtering. So let's go by columns. I'm going to filter on, say, the department name. And I'm going to use the equals operator. So I'm going to choose a specific department. And this time for the source, I might use a control. In which control? Well, that's why expand the next dropdown. Remember we had txt department name. That's why I named them meaningfully. And then click add. And what is this doing so far for us? Take a look. You've got department name and then equals at department name. So the at department underscore name is our parameter here, okay? And the value that will be used will be coming from the text box called txt dept name. Let's do this one more time. So select, for example, the sales amount and use another operator. So maybe less than or equal to this time. And again, the source will be a box. So go over and select control. And again, let's choose the text sales amount this time. And if you wanted to, you could specify a default value, but I won't. So I'm just going to click add. And now we have a new parameter called at sales underscore amount. And the values that we will use for the query will come from the next text box called txt sales amount. And notice that it says dot and then text. The text is a property of the box. You're going to read it through the parameter. You're going to pass it into the query. It will operate and return the results to us and show them in a grid view. That's the basic logic. Click OK. Click Next. First, let's just test the query. So hit Test. In here now, take a look. Remember that when we did this in the database, the department name had a data type, varchar or nvarchar, but here it's just converted into a string. Remember the sales amount had a data type too. It was called money, but here it's just called decimal. So the data types are mapped to some extent between what you have in the server and what you have here. All right. And now it specifies some default values. So remember, one of them was called sedan sales. All right. And say sales amount less than 500,000 or something like that. And then click OK. And again, if you want to know what things do, the best way to do is to break them and then try to fix them. Click OK. And notice that gives 3 results. All right, I'm going to enlarge this a little bit. You can enlarge in here if you want, you see? Click Finish. All right, you may want to enable auto format so it looks a little better. So under Grid View Tasks, hit Auto Format and then select perhaps a different formatting. Sand and Sky. Click OK. So it looks as shown here. And again, as before, if you want, you can enable sorting. We don't need paging here or the ability to go through many different records because we don't have many. Paging is like, when you have a book and you go page by page by page because there's so much information, we don't have to worry about that here. Or enabling selection. Just enable sorting. All right, now let's see whether this is enough to produce a result. Hit Google Chrome. All right, so now it's loaded, and we observe, first of all, that the grid is not showing. All we have are 2 boxes. I'm going to say the department name. I'm going to say sedan sales. And then for the sales amount, remember, this is running on less than or equal to. So I'm going to say less than or equal to, say, 500,000 like this. That's the where clause, right? That's operating behind this box. Right, and hit Enter. And it shows us those quantities there, you see? So it's working. You've got the department and you've got the sales where it's less than or equal to 500,000. Choose a different value in that box. So maybe 250,000, like that. And then again, hit Enter. And it's showing those 2 records. So it's again working correctly. Now, just to show you some of the things that can happen, if in the sales amount box you enter some nonsense and you hit Enter, it gives an error. So obviously, these are things that need to be handled in a professional application, for example. It says input string was not in the correct format. So that would have to be handled professionally, right? So that it doesn't crash this way. And that simply comes from not inputting the right kind of information in the box. All right, but let's see if we input a value like that. And then here, you see automatically, it updates nicely. But then for the department name, you input some text and then hit enter. That doesn't crash. And the reason again is that this box operates on strings. You can input anything that you want there, but the result then is that, of course, nothing is shown because we do not have a department called that. Okay? Input truck sales on the other hand, and hit enter. And now it shows you the truck sales. So this is working quite nicely. Let me terminate this. And then go over to source view. I want to go through the source view a little bit. There's a lot happening here. So let's do the best that we can. Let's separate out things that really matter. So first of all, the select command. Let's take a look at that. So this, despite the fact that it's present in this code here, is still understandable, right? You've got select star from the name of the table where, and now look very carefully. You've got the department name, and it's between square brackets, and then you've got the at parameter right there. That's a parameter. And then you have the and condition. And then it says sales amount. And again, because we said less than or equal to, here you have LT. And then you have the name of the parameter. And if you look carefully down below, you have select parameters right there, that block. And take a look here. So it says ASP colon control parameter. And then it says the control ID. So that's the TXT department name, correct? This name is department underscore name. That's the name of the parameter. This here is the box whose values will be used to set the parameter. Right, property name text and type string. That's for the first box. You can enter anything that you want essentially. For the second one, you have the control ID text sales amount. The name of the parameter is sales underscore amount. Property name again is text. And the type is decimal. So remember for this one here, if you input the wrong kind of data into the second box, it crashes. And take a look here above. If you look at this carefully, you pause the video, right? Pause the video and look at it a little bit carefully. The changes that we make in design view are shown here also. You've got the grid view, you've got the run as server, allow sorting, true, we set that visually. Back color, border width, cell padding. That we set when you, for example, format the appearance of the grid view. You can change these by hand often. So for example, instead of border width 1 pixel, make it 5 pixels to exaggerate it. You want more space around the stuff inside each cell, make the cell padding 5. And so on. And of course, after you make a change, make sure you run it, right? You haven't broken something. All right. And again, these fields down below we have seen before. They're nothing new. Perhaps the only thing is you want to format the header that it says ID like that. And one last place I want to talk about is this one here. In the Solution Explorer on the right side, click web.config and take a look here. What do you see stored here? Take a look. You've got the connection string stored here, you see? Right here. The connection string is stored inside web.config. Okay, friends, I'm going to leave it at this. I know this lesson is a little bit longer, but I think you have, again, learned a huge amount of stuff. And thank you. I'll see you in the next one.